modules are there. In time, there were like 4 types of modules. Time, so date time, PTZ, timeit, but still a lot of other modules newly came. But the most commonly used are like time and date time. So first, if you focus on the time module, what is this time module? How it can help us? So by the time itself is a module. If you want to get any information, like the time zone information or anything else, so this time module can help us. The first and foremost set of things here we can learn is about, as you see, the alt time zone. If you see, if you want to navigate to this directory, you can say that so Python a time zone. If you can observe the same thing, whatever I mentioned here, you can see that. So earlier it was like this. So now you can see that it was minus 3600. So minus 3600. So with respect to this, how far it is, like daylight savings, if there is present or not. Now the daylight saving time is present, right? So that's why it is saying daylight is equal to true. And coming to the time zone. So time zone earlier it was showing like minus 1900, 8000. So when I was in India, so now it is like it is saying as 0. So what is this 0 time zone and all these things, I will tell you shortly. If you are aware of how the time zones are divided, so everyone tells their time in their particular, so time zone. This is called as TZ name, time zone name. For India, we have like Indian Standard Time or Indian Daylight Time. India don't have a daylight saving. That's why it doesn't matter. So no one uses this word called as daylight time. But in the context of other time zones, we have it. So here, if you see GMT Standard Time and GMT Daylight Time were like two things. So mostly when so daylight savings is present, so or not, we can understand. So based upon the daylight saving is present or not, it will show. So earlier it was like, so see ALT zone means what? Minus 3600 means minus 3600 minutes we are moving ahead. Now the daylight savings is present. So if you see UK have a daylight, so actually 0 time, it is in the middle. We call it as GMT or UK UTC time. But now here also 1 hour shift was done. That's the reason you can see 1 hour means 60 into 60, which is 3600. So that's why you're seeing minus 3600. If the same code, if you execute when daylight saving time is not there, then you can see that. So it will be 0. Now daylight saving is present. That's why 1 is. Now time zone, I told it is 0 time zone because I am in middle. So for if you are in any other place, it will show plus or minus. So for India, so as it is ahead of UK, it shows like minus. So 5.5 hours, right? So you are like behind it. So that's why for you, it will say positive. How many minutes you are away from? So sorry, seconds. How many seconds you are far away from the GMT Standard Time? So that's what it says. And similarly, this GM time means Greenwich Mean Time. So Greenwich Mean Time. So many people think like, GMT means German time or something. No, Greenwich Mean Time. So that is one of the place here. So most of the maps are created from with respect to that as a center. That's the reason, so you get like positive or negative with respect to that. So what is the time zone? You get that. So here in my case, if you can see here, earlier showed in one way, now I'm showing the other way. If you see the GMT and local time, see here, almost all were exactly same, right? Because at this juncture, I was in the GMT. So earlier when I was like the other way, so both are different. So GMT and local time, this is called as time tuple. So if you want to get the time, you can get like this. So if you don't give anything, you will get the current time. But so, generally when you're giving a time also, there is an optional parameter. This optional parameter, if you pass, means GMT of 23 so and so I give. And GM local time of this so and so means what? I will tell you what is that shortly. Means time means if you see the watch, you will get what is the time now. But if you're saying GMT of giving a particular number means, that is very interesting. So when you give a specific number, it will tell the same. What it is saying, when you give like 23434 means it is saying that it is of year 1970. So month is 1, date is 1, hours is some seconds, like this. No matter how many times I execute, your general time changes, but if you give some kind of number, it won't change. What is this number called as means timestamp. What is this timestamp? If I execute the same thing, no matter wherever in the world I am placing, I get the same number. So I am saying that there is something called as a era. Like AD, BC, so Saka era, like different eras we call, right? Even in the computational world also, there is a thing called as 1970, the moment when Unix was created. So they mark it like 1970 January 1st is like a new era. So in terms of computational world, they decided. So that's why most of the languages have this. This is called as the timestamp. So any number of seconds, if I say from that start date, how many seconds were passed, how much duration was passed, it will give. The moment I gave like 23434 means, so 23,434 I gave, right? Means, so from the January 1st, so January 1st, 1970, from that these many seconds were passed. After passing these many seconds, what is the date and time? It will say this much. If I give a bigger number, it will give a bigger thing. Of course, we will go to that shortly. So similarly, if you just do GM time, you'll get the, so time tuple I told, right? Similarly, if I say ASC time, means this time tuple is good for understanding. If you want to use like an attribute, you can use it. So you can get a dot time zone, dot hours, like that you can get. But for human beings, it won't be that easy for them to understand. So that's why for converting for human consumption, as C time, it is called as. So you are converting like a C time. What is the C time? C time is a standard way of doing, like Monday. So it means week, then month, years. So then it is easy, right, for anyone to understand what is happening. This is one of the format. So that's why to convert that, we pass to this ASC function. Similarly, you can create your own C times also. If you just give a C time, what is the current time? So I'm right now here. So what are the time? It is showing like that. Similarly, here also timestamp. Here also you give 1000. For 1000, what would be the thing? You see, in 1970, it is January 1st itself, Thursday. So these were the hours. If I give a bigger number, did you see what happened? A big number I gave, it is saying like it is 1998. So some date. So like that it gives. Similarly, so if I say time dot time, till now what's happening? I'm telling like what is ASC time, C time, and all these things. Whereas if you want the current time, timestamp means current time. If I say what is the time right now, so it is 3:16 in the evening for me. So but if I want to know its timestamp, so it will say time dot time is equal to this thing. Now it means that if I pass this time again back to, so if again back to this C time or something else, you can notice the same. If I put time like time dot as C time of, if I say like this, sorry, time dot GM time or local time. So I'm also in the my local time and GM time are both are same. So if I execute, you can notice the last time what are I passed. So that would be today only. See here 23. So March 6th. So 15th is means already some execution happened, right? So that's why it is showing. So like that, if you want the same time not in seconds but in nanoseconds, you can give that time underscore nanoseconds. Then it will give the nanoseconds times for the same time. So with this time module, we can do some good things. Next, going further. So mostly in real time, people use this for a factorial calculations and others means. So this is one of the most important thing people use. Generally, these time zones people use for like working with time taken for any logic. Generally, what happens when you have some logic to do? any logic when you are executing, before the starting and after the ending, we write a time taken, right? So if you see, generally we take the total time taken, we want to calculate. So before any work and after that work, we want to check how much time it took. So if you want to do that, so what I can do, say factorial of some 7 I give. Assume it is some logic I have. So some logic I have. If I execute CLS and Python, so you see now, it is saying that, so this much it is executing and it is giving a result as like 720, right? This is good factorial. Now I want to know how much time it is taking. How to know how much time something is taking? So if you know, right? So there is something called as the time.time. You can take the time module, import the time module. You can do, means like start, you can tell, and also you can tell the end. So like that, right? I can do. Now if I execute, what will happen? Starting with this thing, so end is this thing. So you know the start time and end time. Then obviously I can calculate the time taken, right? So can I think like, tell like this? So print off. So start time, end time means what? Every time before doing that, instead of printing, I can assign to a variable called as start time is equal to time.time. So instead of printing. So similarly, now during the end, instead of printing, so again, what I can do? So can I tell like, time taken? So can I do like, time.time, which are the time is there, minus start time. So now you see in the same thing, Python, you see now what happened? It is saying time taken is 0. Do you think like it took 0? So maybe like, let me give you one more example. So you will understand. So why it is saying 0. So this time instead of 7, I give like 77. Now you see the same example. What happened? When I did 77, it is saying a big number. When I'm doing a 7, it is saying like this thing. But in both the cases, it is saying 0, right? Means time is good enough, but it can't help you in all the times. So, but like, so if you go for time, NS means nanoseconds. That is also a good thing. So it will calculate everything in nanoseconds, and from that it will do the computations. So everywhere we instead of time, we can go for time nanoseconds. So if I do like this in this time, you see now, still it is showing like 0, right? So that is one problem. Second thing, every time when you execute, you are doing. So two problems here. So every time instead of you doing it, so how to better solve it? Okay, every time or nano time, every time you are doing, right? Rather, within the code itself, you can write, right? So within the code itself. And the time taken means at the end before printing, you want to print it. So don't you think this is much better than like every time doing it? So now instead of doing in multiple times, I can just print. I need not bother right now. So what are the number maybe? I need not bother and I can execute it. You see now, of course, still the time became 0, but you're getting some results. It's okay. You're getting some values. But even get then in this much work is happening. So these are not helping us. So that's the reason they told like, instead of time.time, there is something called as performance counter. So instead of time.nanotime, so there is something called as performance counter. So if you use a performance counter, so now it would be easy. Means everything is designed to calculate the time only. But if you want to calculate this kind of difference in time taken and others, in that case, we should go for performance counter. Did you see performance counter is now giving some number? So this is much more clear for you to understand. So that's the reason fine we have created. Similarly, if you have created one more function, say like you are going for say, so define. So get values, get say even numbers, get even numbers. If I say even numbers, and if you are given some number, say n, so for number in range of n means what? Each time the number comes, if number percentile 2 equal to 0, then you want to append. Say like events equal to some list you took. So it's a typical events dot append of, so that number return events. So this is a function you have. Now if you execute print of say events, get even numbers of say 10, till 10 you get it, you get some numbers. Say if you do the same thing, so till 100 you want to get the numbers. If I execute again, I get the numbers. And here also if I want to get the same thing, what I do, so I write the same logic, right? So starting, and also before the end I write the logic. You see, before the end also I write the logic. Now we see in this case, so every time you are calculating and get the values, this is fine. Maybe like you are not interested in the results, but you are just interested in the time taken. So or whatsoever maybe you are getting. So now how do you address this time? Slash n. Okay. Instead of that, I can do a, so like that if I do like twice it can do, so that you can better see what is the next result. Okay. So now it would be much more clear for you to understand. Okay, time taken, time taken, time taken, like that. So now we understood. To address this better, what I told, if there are more than one function with some part of the code which is common, instead of doing like this, how we can better solve? We can create a decorator which can do the time taken, and we can get using that. So how to address that? So we can create a decorator, define time taken. Why I'm telling this means it is very much interested, which is very much needed for you. Time taken. So how do you create a decorator function? So within that you need to define a inner function, star args and star star kw args, and this is a pass, means what are the logic you want to do. So return the inner function. First, this is how you create a simple decorator. Now you need to write whatever you want within it. So within it, what you want? First, it need to do the start time. Then it need to execute the internal result function, which are is given, and what are the arguments you give. Okay, and then like it need to calculate the time taken. So this is what you're expecting, right? So you can tell like what is the time taken, and finally you want to return the executed result. What are you want? So don't you think you want to create a decorator like this? Now your problems are like much more easy now. So instead of doing like this, so you can address it in much better way. Method 2, in a much better way you can address it. How you can address? So instead of writing this repetitive code in your logic, you can remove that. So instead of writing this repetitive logic in your code, you can remove that, and you can focus purely on your logic. So don't you think it's much more easy now? So if I execute now, you can notice that in the first way also you can do, second way also you can do. So what is that I made use of it? I created a practical example of how do you calculate the time taken by any function. If you want to calculate, this is how you do it. Okay, I want to comment it. Okay, hope it's clear. Next, going further, after the time taken, so the next thing that you want to see is about, oh, forgot to add this one, right? So we can write like a decorator in the top. Yeah, that is the most important thing. Yeah, so now it will calculate. Because of this visual noise, you cannot see too much. So means like this prints, this is like taking crazily and more time. So for printing this thing, that's why you are seeing, not seeing. Now you see, now you are seeing both the time taken, right? So both in this case also, you should see the same thing. as we didn't write that thing that you didn't see earlier. Now if I write, now I can see time taken 4 times taken. Okay, that's it. So next, going further. So there is one more most important usage of time, that is the sleep. Sleep means if you want to write any statement and you want to sleep for some time. What do you mean by sleeping? So I will tell you what is that. If I say one print statement, say hello, then if I say like print the world, then what will happen if I say CLS and Python C so and so? I got hello world, right? So in between, so first I want to import time module, and between that I want to say like time dot sleep, sleep of 10. So you see this time what will happen? If I say Python C so and so, hello came, but till the next 10 seconds, nothing will execute. It's not that program termination was completed. Program will be paused. Now you see, after 10 seconds. So if you want to do the check again, say for I in range of say some 10. So print of say hello world. So hello world sleeping for so percentile x seconds. If you want to sleep for those many seconds. F. So whatever is I, that much time it will sleep. So for that I can write time dot sleep of I. Now you can notice this time. So instead of 10 seconds, I'll mark it as like some 5 seconds so that it will come down fast. Okay. Now if you execute this time, initially hello comes. Then after that, like it will wait for 5 seconds. Then world comes. Now did you see? Each time 0 seconds, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That much time it is waiting, sleeping. This is all about like to sleep. If you want to, just check. So previously we wrote a decorator, right? So we can make use of the same to understand in real time how things works. Maybe like, so I make use of the decorator which we created earlier. Using that, I want to calculate how much time something is taking. So I wrote a logic, you see here, time taken function, so which takes the number and like sleeps for that much time. Now I want to check like how much time it is sleeping. So how much time it is taking, right? So if I want to calculate, you see now I write the logic like this. You see this time what I wrote? Apart from these three, I wrote the logic like this. Means, so initially how much time it is taking. If I want to evaluate that, let me comment these two for you to understand this. If I clear and run again, first initially for the first one, it will go and sleep for 1 second. Second one, it is going and sleeping for 2 seconds. Third one, it is going and sleeping for 3 seconds. So for each time, what are the arguments you passed? And those many number of times it is sleeping. That's what I'm printing. So don't you think it's interesting? So this is all about real-time usage. But there will be a lot of other things which we want it to be done in real time. So for that, there is one more thing called as the timeit module. So timeit is a very interesting module. So if you want to work it, so it has a good amount of syntax. So first thing first, this timeit. So there are two ways of usage. One is in the Jupyter notebook, other one is directly. So if you see the code here, I wrote very clearly the examples. If you just have a piece of code, if you want to check how much it is, I can do Python-m, the module. Timeit is a module, and you give the things. For this, it will check like, I have executed for 10,000 loops, and best of the 5 is this thing. Among those 1,000 loops, what are the best are there? Among those 5 times, which are is having the minimum time? This is microseconds. It is saying microseconds per loop. Means it is taking 2.48 microseconds per loop. That is the best it can do on my system. Similarly, I give one more logic and I'm asking how much time it is taking. Similarly, I give one more logic, I'm checking it. So this is all about command line syntax. In command line Python, in our terminal, we can try like this. If you want to check the time taken by any logic. Similarly, in the command line itself, you can say like, so you can pass, hey, instead of you doing 10,000 loops, if you want to do in a specific number of loops, that also you can pass. -n means how many loops. Here there's a clear syntax. How many number of times you want it to loop and check. How many times it need to repeat. So what is the setup? Means before writing the logic, if something need to be done. And the units, whether you want in nanoseconds, microseconds, milliseconds, or seconds. If you specify all these details, it can give the complete information. I wrote a lot of examples for you to hear to see. But this is all about if you know some logic, and for that logic, if you want to evaluate how the total time taken, means the performance of anything if you want to check. This is how you check it. But there is one more module. So another usage of it. So command line, I told using timeit module directly in the command line. Similarly, within the logic, if you have, like in a Python script mode, if you want to check, so you can give like timeit of what are the logic you gave earlier. There -n, here number is equal to how much times you want to loop. So like that, the same things whatever you did there, here also we can do. And not only that, we can specify the number of repetitions, how much time you want to repeat something. And also not only that, so there is one more thing called as timer. So timer, it will actually, we can pass like, enable GC means there is something called as garbage collector. Actually, when you're processing every time, so it will add some kind of, so slowness in Python or any other language depends upon the garbage collector also. So that's the reason sometimes to avoid the things, they ask us to enable or disable this garbage collector. So we do that. So it means like additional options you can pass. So among these things, if you see the example, the B so and so, you see now whatever you have done in the command line in the previous example, the same things will work. If you have a bigger logic also, you can pass, but everything should be like a string. Only if something like a string you can use it. Sir, in which cases we use it? You don't use this code in production. Before going to production, if you want to check something, so you do it. So that's the reason. So timeit is not in the production case. So only for you to analyze and understand. And not only this, sometimes you will have a complex logic. You want to do some setup before executing. Means you want to check. So check for in membership check is there. You want to check char in language. So if you have a string, in that you are checking for a character. So for checking that, first of all, that string should be defined, right? And ch means what is that char? Means t. So like that, if you want to do the extra setup, or sometimes something bigger setups will be there. So like that also you can try. So you can add more attributes and all these things. I wrote different examples. And similarly, not only that, the real more use cases of timeit will come when you go for Jupyter Notebook. So when you go for Jupyter Notebook, we have cells or the blocks, right? So where you can do block by block comparisons and others. So that is where you can use it. Let me open it. Any doubts still now? Don't know why it's taking more time. You see, so there is something very interesting. In Jupyter Notebook, there are something called as magic blocks, we say. Means if you execute any number 2 to the power of something, you generally don't get any value. You just get what are the number you have. Means what are the processing you do, you get the result. That's it. Whereas, did you see, I am prepending it with a percentile time and a space. If you have bigger logic, you write in multiple lines. It doesn't matter. But at the starting of this cell, you write like percentile time means, then it will treat like a timeit block and it will say wall time. So how much time it took, like wall time. And similarly, it's a small number to compute. That's why it took very fast. But if I say like n equal to something, and if you're doing sum of range of n, obviously it will take more time, right? So that's why it is saying wall time of 51 milliseconds. And you got your result. Similarly, if I say time and if I write like, hello world. So for that line by line, if for a particular line, if you want to check, you can do that. So similarly, if I do like this, how much time it took? It's a big number computed, but generally math computations will not take that much time. So similarly, if I give this much thing, but it's a power operation, it's very costly. That's why it took more time. So this is all about time. Similarly, for time it also there is another thing. If I say time it, and if I do a pass, time it means I told you it's not the time taken, but the how many times I repeated the same thing. What is the average time? So all those information it will give, right? That's what time it does. If I do just a pass, even pass is a statement to execute, right? So for it also it is saying. If I say a equal to none and so I'm checking, so identity check. Even for that also it is saying that I took this many nanoseconds, plus or minus so and so. And here you can say like how many times to repeat the same thing. Okay, check the same thing 4 times. Check that u equal to so and so. So it is saying like whether which is taking more time and less time. You see, so it took like relatively less time. So is whereas equal to took a slightly more time. That's it. Similarly, so n1 time dot sleep of 2 seconds. You're sleeping for 2 seconds and you want to repeat. So n1. So n minus n hyphen n is 1 actually it is. So means like one time only it has done. That's why one loop each. So it took like 2 seconds. As you slept for 2 seconds, exactly took 2 seconds. Similarly, sum of range of 100. So for that it took like this much time. Similarly, I told right. If you instead of a one line, if you have a multiple bigger things, you write percentile time it. So for the entire block to check, you do 2 percentiles. If you want to check for a one line, you write a single percentile. These are like magic blocks in Python. Not only this, then I will show you afterwards. There are multiple such things. And in data engineering, we do a lot of things. So in Jupyter notebooks like this, I have a bigger logic. It is executing and showing. Similarly, I have a bigger things. You see here, I wrote in one line. The difference you observe. If I do 2 percentiles, we do in the starting of the cell. For the entire cell, how much time it took, it tells. Whereas if I do a single as percentile, it will do only for this line. Means not for creating these values, it took the time. Only for sorting, it took this much time. That's what I want to tell. Similarly, here I do 2 percentiles in the starting. Means for the entire thing, how much time it took, it will tell. Similarly, here, if you see here, so it have two strings, but doing f string. For f string, see here how much time it took. Similarly, if you do like ordinary string concatenation, see how much time it took, 106 milliseconds, nanoseconds, right? So which one is less comparatively? Check that. So if I do a delimiter dot join, it took furthermore, so less. So I think like it is 91, right? So 91 milliseconds, nanoseconds. And this is like 106, 105 or 106. It's a big thing. That's why, so F strings are the best. So if you do like ordinary volt type, so it took like, so 199. So sometimes this number changes because of your CPU strength. So if your RAM capacity and all these things slightly changes happens. But overall comparatively, so among all of the things you have seen till now, did you see that format strings is taking the largest time? F string is taking the least time. Similarly, you see, datetime is a very big module. Time is also there. And later, after some time, they created this datetime module. So though time also does a lot of things which datetime does, most of the people use datetime because of a lot of other options also it has. Datetime module, once you import, you can see it has a lot of attributes. So even if you ignore the things which have underscores on either side, still a lot of modules are there. And for the first time, you can notice that even a datetime module is also having sys and time modules. So from now, you can learn every other things like this. So most of the modules will have the other modules also imported in it because they make use of them when they are created. So that's the reason datetime module was created based upon the time module only with more enhancements. That's the reason you see these modules within it. Means this module we can indirectly access like this also, but that is not a correct way of doing. but be aware of how things works in real time. In daytime, there is like what is the maximum and minimum year that we can process. So of course, it's a big number to say. Hope you remember the Y2K problem came because of these limits only, which were not there earlier that much. Earlier there used to be till 99. So once 2000 year came, all systems became 0 year instead of becoming like 2001. So that's the standard Y2K problem. To solve that, they made it like 4 nines. So that's a very big number. So, and like in terms of resolution, what is the minimum and maximum it can calculate? So minimum, so and maximum, and in terms of resolution, seconds, minimum microseconds, till that resolution it can do. And similarly for the dates, what is the minimum maximum? So for the time, so what is the minimum maximum? So maximum time means what? For a day, so 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds, 999. So in terms of the time zone information. So time zone information means at this moment you're not seeing anything, but I will show you what is that afterwards. So typically any datetime object will have 3 components. One is a date object, another one is time object. If you combine that together, it is called as a datetime object. From now, we should be understanding this kind of point. So date object and time object and datetime object. So generally, if you want to get that current time, so datetime is a module. From that, you need to go for datetime dot now. We should say that datetime dot now to get anything. So, but in real time, so most of the time, if you see the code, people will do the other way. There are 2 ways of importing anything. Either you can do import datetime. This is called as total import. And similarly, there is called as selective import. From datetime, if I want to import a specific thing, under datetime also there is another attribute called as datetime. See, if I use directly like this, datetime dot now. If I do like that, I will get the current time, right? Similarly, I can also do like this. In that case, I can do datetime dot now directly. Did you understand these 2 types of imports? This is absolute import and this is selective import. If you just want only one attribute, you can do the selective import. If you want to do multiple things with that module, you can do direct import and do like this. So whenever you see anyone's code, so don't get confused. These are the 2 ways of doing any module. So if you see now in this case, what happens? I'm doing a entire import, absolute import, because I want to do multiple things. So datetime dot now. So it is giving that current time and time. So which is there at that time, it is giving that. And similarly, if I say now dot date on that particular date, so what is the day? So what is the date? It is showing. Similarly, if you want to get the time on that day, what is time? You see 16, 14 like that, it is showing. Similarly, in the same lines, if I say datetime dot combine, means see if you have a datetime object, if you want to extract only the date part or only the time part, you can do. Or if you have these date and time objects separately, from that also you can combine and create a datetime object. This is how you use and create the things together. Hope it's clear. So this is what I want to tell. Not only creating, then sometimes if you want to get the offsets like delta changes, means you have today's date, you want to get the yesterday's date, then what you need to do? Datetime dot delta time delta of day is equal to 1. So we can say like day is equal to 1, minutes equal to 1, hours, like that we can specify. Means if I say after 1 minute or before 1 minute or after half an hour, so like that I want to tell, right? If you want to create any such times, if you can just do, and you can subtract. So you want yesterday's date, right? I created a delta of 1 and I'm subtracting today minus 1. I cannot just say today minus 1, right? So instead of that, I should say like this delta days equal to 1. Similarly, if I say yesterday minus today now, so that also it will give indirectly the same thing. So like this, things will work. And after that, if I see here, you can see that how much time it's taking. If you have some raw values, with that also you can create a datetime object. So, or similarly, if you have a individually also you can give and create a datetime object. I gave like 1945, 15, 8. So it created. Similarly, if I just create a time, so for time also I can give like hours, minutes, seconds. If I don't give anything, it will assume everything is 0. So for time 000 means it is valid. For hours 000 means it's not valid, right? That's why it will throw in error. So for date, if you need to pass. Similarly, if you pass some values, it will do. Or if you pass like some hours and minutes, it will tell what is that. Or if you similarly like a time object, date time object is there. So for that, if you pass like everything, it will create the object. It would be a bit of learning. So over practice, you will remember a lot of things. So anyone, even if you are an experienced also, sometimes you will get confusion because this is a learning, right? So you can learn Python, but module also you need to learn how to use a module. So instead of that, you also can go and check, but it would be difficult, right? So that's why everyone learns modules. So similarly, if you have a datetime dot replace, sometimes what happens in real time, so you will get a CSV file. They say that, so in that CSV file, someone has done a mistake. So they did a year which is wrong. Instead of like, 1984, you need to replace the year with 2019. But all other data set is same. In that case, you can do replace something. You can get it. Similarly, hope you remember I told what is called as timestamp. Means total time, how much we can calculate using the timestamp. Means total number of seconds which are passed from that day. I told something called as epoch time, right? 1st of January 1970. So it is treated as epoch time. So you go to any language in computation thing, everyone know what is an epoch. So from UTC, from timestamp of 0, if I say 1970 January 1st 000. So I created a time zone date time object. From today, if I subtract, means it took like these many days for the day. And similarly, for these many days, how in the entire thing, how many days are there? This is what. If you want to calculate how many seconds, so seconds also it will tell. So after that, in the difference, and total seconds also it will give. So like that, you can give different numbers from the timestamp. If I give a big number, did you see it is saying 2022? So 5, so 25, like that. So you try giving any big number, it will give. Sir, can I give a number which is seconds past our current date? Yes, of course. Then it will give like 2020, so or like 21,000. So 22nd century, 23rd century also can go with that, and you can check. Similarly, if you want to get the time information, I told there are two types of ways. One is time.time.now, means it will give a local time. So, or you can get the UTC time. So for everyone to understand, for UTC and GMT, many people will confuse. So UTC means universal time, or GMT means also Greenwich Mean Time, which is at the center. So the most common way people use it, UTC. So because earlier people used to use GMT a lot of time, but because GMT is like a particular place, someone don't want to use political reasons and others. That's why like UNO so told created this UTC. So means the same thing, old wine in new bottle, like that. So most commonly people refer with UTC, like that. So similarly, so from that, if you create an object, from that you can access anything attributes individually. And the most important thing, if you have an object, so this is what very important. You go to this site called as strftime.com. It will give you a lot of attributes for you to understand how to use them. So take this as an assignment for today. Just walk through them. Go to this site, you will get a lot of formatting. Means, say you have some data and time created, but in database it is in a particular format. Assume that it is not in a string. Or let's say you are giving to a client need in a particular format. So how do you convert? For that, we need to have these percentiles. Percentile capital Y means 4-digit year. So small y means 2-digit year. Similarly, percentile M means, so month as a day, month as a number. So whereas, so here is the other side. So like that. And similarly, you see here, whatever I did, hyphens, spaces, colons, exactly they are coming, right? You give try with different things and come back. So if you have any doubts, whatever I do like hyphens or so and so, you will get it. So exactly everything will come. Only the places where we have percentiles, these percentiles will be replaced. So if you see here, instead of percentile m, if I do percentile capital B, did you see you got the complete word number month? If I do small b, you will get NOV, means like a numerics. So instead of numerics, you like alphabets. So small B means you see NOV. Similarly, like hours means there are two ways. So 24 hours format and 12 hours format. If I do 12 hours format, percentile I, then you can do like AM or PM you want to tell, right? For that percentile P. And if you want to specify the time zone also, there is something called a time zone. But in fact, you don't get the time zone by default. So like this it happens. This is how if you have a datetime object, you can convert to a string. So I will pause here.